Democrat Councillor Caroline Lever, who sits on both Devon County and North Devon District Councils. Welcome to you all. Now, Somerset Council warned this week that it could be facing bankruptcy, and it says one of the main causes is the rising cost of providing care for the elderly. Meanwhile, one care agency in North Devon has told us they're no longer providing care packages in people's homes as the available funding simply isn't sufficient to cover the costs. Ewan Murrie reports.
Darling, don't we talk?
We do talk,
you see.
Irene, who has just turned 96, moved into this care home in Plymouth after having a fall.
It suits me, you see, because there's everything here. What do you want more than feeding and talking to people and seeing people visiting?
She's hoping her estate will have enough to cover her fees after already selling her own home.
I had a few things, ISAs and things, and they all went in there, and then, of course, I sold the house. So, for the time being, they say, don't worry about it, Grandma, and they think that it'll easily do me out if it's 102.
But those without assets rely on councils to cover their costs, and the rates they can afford to pay are leaving businesses like this struggling to make ends meet.
Sometimes care home owners are kind of labelled with having a lot of money and, having nice cars or nice holidays or whatever it is. But I think the reality is, since February 21, we haven't taken a penny out of the business, because actually what we've wanted to do is any profit that we've had, we've wanted to put back into the business to make sure people are paid better wages or make sure that we've got a better environment.
Funding from the government for councils increased this year compared to last, but the sector would argue that it's not enough to cope with rising demand for adult care services, especially in regions like here in the southwest, where we have an ageing population.
There has been underfunding into social care now for decades or more. So where we've got to is a situation where we've got an increasing number of elderly people who are drawing on services. But of course, there is also the working age adults that also require services. Now, a lot of those people, fortunately, are living much longer.
And council cash is now so tight that one local provider, which didn't want to be named, told us it had stopped providing care in the community altogether. Meanwhile, Tavi Care, based in Devon, said it was now receiving fewer referrals from local authorities, raising the question of whether some are going without.
Local authorities, without the money, they can't source the care. But I think that what's going to happen is we're going to end up seeing people far more unwell before they get through the social care system and get commission packages of care, which will mean higher pressure on the likes of us and other providers.
So could we end up seeing a kind of two-tier system?
That is exactly what's happening, and that's reflected as well in the Care Quality Commission State of Care report that came out, I think it was last week. They've talked about this sort of two-tier system that they feel is going on as well. So you're going to have people with money with care and people without money probably going without.
The government says it's providing up to £8 billion over 2 years so that councils can spend more on care. It says that average pay in the sector has gone up and the vacancy rate has decreased slightly to 9.9%.
I can't walk out.
Meanwhile, in Plymouth, Jean and Irene from the Thornbury Villa Care Home are special guests on a new community radio show.
Well, pledges from successive prime ministers that they would stop people having to sell their homes to pay for care go back a long way. Here's a quick reminder, beginning in 1997, the year Ben was first elected.
I don't want them brought up in that sort of country. I don't want them brought up in a country where the only way pensioners can get long-term care is by selling their home, where people who fought to keep this country free are now faced every winter with the struggle for survival, skimping and saving, cold and alone, waiting for death to take them.
And a guide for that society that those who can should, and those who can't, we will always help. I want to make sure that my government always looks after the elderly, the frail, the poorest in our country. We must take everyone through us on some of the difficult decisions that we have ahead.
My job is to protect you or your parents or grandparents from the fear of having to sell your home to pay for the costs of care. And so I am announcing now on the steps of Downing Street that we will fix the crisis in social care once and for all with a clear plan we have prepared to give every older person the dignity and security they deserve.
One of the other things that can make a difference is social care. I think one of the reasons that people are waiting for ambulances or they're waiting for surgery is we've got thousands of people in hospitals who don't need to be there. They should be with their families, back in their communities. And that's why we've put money into social care to help them get home quickly, and that will reduce waiting times for everyone earlier on in the system.
Now, Nick, you were nodding along there with the Prime Minister, but of course the reality is the present government